Hey Jeremy, how has your day been? How is it going?
Going well. Looking forward to this. We're kind of at the end of my day, so I've been like anxiously waiting to be able to talk to you.
Awesome, that's amazing. I mean, we have also been kind of thinking how soon we can get you on the call. So, for all our viewers, hello everyone. Welcome to Cloud Eagle's SaaS Mastermind podcast. So today we are honored to have Jeremy here, but Jeremy Boerger on the call. And as a recognized thought leaders in leader in IT asset management and creator of the Pragmatic ITAM method, joining us.
Mhm.
Jeremy is a well known for helping companies cut software spend without buying less software. He's also an accomplished author and keynote speaker and a seasoned advisor on how to optimize IT strategies for tangible business outcomes. So, welcome, Jeremy.
Thank you so much, and that's quite an introduction. I feel like I, I'm blushing.
It's really nice to kind of know about people. That's it's really amazing. So we'll just get started. I was kind of thinking how all of these things fit into IT leadership and strategy. Okay.
hmm
Jeremy, let's start by talking about IT leadership. How can modern IT leaders align technology strategies with broader organizational goals to deliver maximum impact, especially in fast changing all these business landscape where you have AI, where you have kind of chat GPT and like a very different approach right now.
Right, right. Well, so again, as I say in my book, where you are positioned in the company is going to color how you look at things. So, as a asset management professional, I say the secret is asset management. Surprise! But to be very clear, the around the impact, the and helping the IT department align with the corporate goals in from our point of view, from the asset manager's point of view, it's about the data and really getting clear on what data is being generated by your people, by your processes, by your other systems, who's consuming that, who needs that to do a particular process, and then what kind of data gets generated afterwards that then kicks off the next part of the process, the next part of the assembly line. And that, I think, is where modern business is really struggling, is that the amount of tools and the new whiz bang shiny thing that comes out, we're too quick to say, okay, well, let's use this before we figure out, well, how can we use this? What is going to be the impact? What kind of data does it need to take in? What kind of data is it going to generate for going out? And we're just not good at that. So the first step, I've got to say, to answer your question, is get clear on the data,
Hmm.
get clear on how that data drives those processes,
Makes sense.
and then try to figure out, well, does this new shiny widget actually enhance, or is it a blocker, or is there some other issue that
Makes sense.
you're going to run into afterwards?
Makes sense. I think even before we get started, we wanted to know what we are kind of dealing with, and then
Mm-hmm.
start off the whole process, I guess. Nice.
Oh yeah, and tech's fun, right? I mean, it is so cool. You sit down and you get this new tool and you start poking around with it. It's like, ooh, look at this new stuff that you can do. And the next thing you know, the week is gone, and it's like, oh well, what have I learned? What have I done? I don't know, but this is cool.
Right, right. I think that's it has been there. Also, I think all these IT you know uh, s- things going on. Resiliency is also like a big
hmm
thing these days. And could you also share your perspective on how we can build resilient IT teams that can adapt to basically certain market shift and disruptions which happens, and how does this tie up overall in fostering innovation across the organization?
Right. So I think the big issue when it comes to resiliency is availability, is time. And too often organizations want to squeeze every last brain cycle out of a human being to be able to say that it's generating to the return on investment. And humans don't work that way. Computers do. AI will. Machines will. If they're not plugging out widgets, then it's just sitting there on the shelf, and that's really not doing much.
Makes sense.
Um, but humans, we need time off. We need time to step back. And that's actually a lesson. I'll give a shout out to my wife. She is a amazing project manager, very high up in her career. Uh, and I'm saying that not just because I'm married to her and she'd poison my dinner if I said otherwise, but one of the big lessons that I learned from her in her work is only budget for 6 hours.
Okay.
That's it. That's all you get for workable time. A human being really only puts together 6 hours. Why? What else happens? Well, they go to the bathroom, they get up and they walk around. There takes time to move a
Interesting.
human being from one meeting to another meeting. Even on these Zoom conversations, you got to set it off. You got to take a break. You got to kind of reset and then go into the next meeting. And then there's crises that happen, right? The unknown unknown all of a sudden pops up, the black swan, the out of left field sort of thing. You can't presume that it won't happen, so make sure that there's time to accept it when it does happen, and then adjust to your time. So that really is the key secret, and really the project managers have that pretty well down. Just don't put in 8 hours, put down six. You'll end up working 10. I don't doubt it. But you can't constantly push for that overreach without either burning out your employees or um, missing out when that losing that resiliency when something that you really need them to focus on happens.
Really, I think really makes sense. It's also on how do you optimize your time and
Hmm.
how do you keep the momentum going within the team, within all the IT teams?
Right. The That's a really good question. Um, I would love to say that I've got it figured out. I don't always. Um, there is a social component that needs to happen. There is something lost when you are constantly on the phone or video chatting. That it's great that we can now tap into resources that are not geographically close, but we still need to find time to do the shake hands, kiss babies, and be in the same room, breathe the same air, as one of my former managers put it. Um, Striking that balance is tough. The good managers can do it. The poor managers force everybody to come into the office.
Okay. Back to office
That's
for a lot of people.
somebody's going to be chuckling on that one. Please don't wreck your car. But that's
Nice. Makes sense. I mean, this is amazing. Quite helpful. So, I also wanted to, I was wondering about the importance of ESG, environmental, social, and governance
yeah.
goals in IT. So, why should CIOs, IT leaders prioritize ESG in their tech initiative? And how, and do you have any examples of how this aligns basically with ITAM or SaaS management has driven both ethical practice and cost efficiency?
Yeah, okay. So that's
Yes.
quite the subject. We could almost just take an entire hour dissecting that question, couldn't we?
Uh,
So let's start with the ESG. That means environmental, social, and governance, right?
right.
The like we were alluding before, there's the human component is the most important thing, and corporations are not substitutes for human beings, but they do exist in a human being world. So the idea of that ESG is really to remind leadership that you are dealing with human beings, even not just your customers and your clients, but also your employees and their families. You're really taking an employee out of their preferred environment and bringing them into an office or sitting them down into a computer in a walled off section of their own house and taking up their time for 8, 9, 10 hours a day. They'd be doing, if you're going to do that, then you should really be considerate to what those human beings consider important. What's their environment like outside of the corporate walls? What's the social engagements that they could be helping out with, and what's that governance? So for my own company and the ones that I work for, we encourage talking to the employees. What is important? Where are opportunities that the corporation itself can apply extra resources or extra help to help solve employee or environmental, social, and governance activities. So now to get to specifically to ITAM, one of the best ways to do that is something called the second act planning.
Okay.
So for an asset management, especially on hardware, not so much software, at least in the United States, and I'll explain in a moment. With hardware, you've got a life cycle. You buy it, you make it ready, you use it, and then you got to decide after you're done using it, can you do anything else with it? And if you can, then you clean it up, get it ready for use again, and then put it back into the environment. That's that recovery stage. And then if you can't, then you dispose of it. Well, in second act mentality, you when you buy that device, you already have a plan for its next iteration. It's not just, well, what could we find for something? It's already earmarked for that. And a percentage, if you've got a large population of hardware, a percentage of that is going to be for, hey, we know that we can't fold proteins with this stuff anymore. We can't model airflows over airplane wings with it anymore. But by golly, it's going to do some really good work for the marketing team or even the interns that could be coming in over the summer. They get to play with the tech that they wouldn't be exposed to. And it extends it prevents us from having to buy brand new equipment for these folks that might be here only for 3 months. That's just an example. But the second act then can also reach into the post disposal. So when organizations can engage with their dross and their e-cycling uh, providers, the
Okay.
providers can already say, we have a solution for this device, and give, instead of just giving money for the device, the organization can actually donate in kind and allow these devices to work for elementary schools or doing some other work that the social good can then be broadcast that, hey, this is something that this large organization has been able to help with. Now, I mentioned software. Software, especially in the United States, does not get donated or released. It usually just gets abandoned. They'll buy the license, they might buy some upgrades, but usually it gets sat on. But the concept of a second act with the software to be able to release that license that you know you're no longer using and allow some other entity uh, to be able to use that, learn on it, and improve their workforce, maybe even in training or uh, some other socioeconomic deficiency. That's great. And again, it gets to that human element that that a corporation can actually help with. So I hope that makes sense. That was an awful long tirade.
No, I think there were a lot of points involved there in terms of
Mm-hmm.
human, socio, uh,
Mm-hmm.
their environmental effects, and I think it all ties up together to answer these questions. I think this is amazing. Also,
Mm-hmm.
there is cross-functional collaboration, which is another crucial puzzle here, I would say.
Mm-hmm.
Team plays a very big role because there are different departments like finance, HR, procurement, basically, to boost overall business performance. So,
Mm-hmm.
how does that, IT plays a role in bridging this silo gaps between each department?
Yeah. So from our perspective, it is data. It always comes down to the data.
Okay.
The joke I usually make is IT is great so long as you don't see it. Um, it's really IT is becoming so integral to doing modern business. It's more akin to, and I hate to say this, to janitors, the folks that keep the lights on and the wheels turning in the building, the cleaning staff that come in and clear all the debris and empty the trash cans and make sure that there's no distractions in the building from, like somebody's smelly breakfast that got dumped all over the kitchenette. Nah, that's where IT's real role is to get out of the way of the business and maybe even facilitate better communication between the departments. So that's really where the key is to facilitate the data information transfers between the silos and then get out of the way. If it breaks, you fix it fast and get people back to work. If the data is wrong, you find out why, you fix it, and then get the people back to work. And so it's those two demands that need to interplay in my mind.
Got it. I think it's more like an enabler. IT is an enabler to the teams, and
Yes.
okay.
Oh, yeah. Enabler is a much better word than janitor.
IT teams should not feel bad about it.
No, not at all. In fact, it sounds funny, but one of the first people when I walk into a new into it with a new client and you get the tour of the building, one of the first people that I end up talking to is the folks doing the cleanup work, the janitorial work. They know where the bathrooms are, they know where the kitchen is, they know where the food is, they know everything about that building. You figure your way out so much faster as soon as you start to talk to them, and they'll almost always love talking to you too, and getting that acknowledgement that they're important as well. So yeah,
Right. That's
they enable business as much as IT does.
amazing. I mean, that's amazing, Jeremy. Okay, so let's shift gear from, and talk about the emerging trends that are
Mm,
reshaping the SaaS delivery. So there is generative AI, there is blockchain, there is quantum computing, all the, promising stuff that is, significantly transforming the entire segment. So how do you see these technologies influencing the way enterprise manage and optimize their current SaaS or software portfolios?
okay, so I'm gonna make a confession right here, Gaurav.
Okay.
Um, it's gonna be apology, but in my book, I made a prediction,
Hmm.
two predictions actually, that from an asset management perspective, the two big game changers are going to be blockchain,
Hmm.
really not blockchain, but NFTs, non fungible tokens for software licensing and digital twins. I was wrong about blockchain. blockchain I saw a couple of companies. I sat on an advisory board for one of them. No takers, none at all, which is absolutely just breaks the heart, because there are a couple of very important use cases
Okay.
inside the software licensing world that blockchain would is the perfect solution for, and there's just no appetite to apply that technology. So I love the blockchain, but there's just in our world it's not going anywhere, and I'm sorry to say it. So, but but um, not so much generative AI, but certainly agentic AI. Being able to build systems that can make kind of the autopilot decisions around the computing environment. That's the key. That's good money right there. Um, and it comes back to what I was saying before. That requires data. So once you build up a proper model of who's talking to whom, who's generating what kind of data, and then what kind of data do they need in order to make their decisions, you can build out a operative model, best case operative model for your entire IT department. And once that gets plugged into a computing management system, or an operating management system, and I don't want to speak ill of anybody, but I know ServiceNow is working on it. I know not Open AI, Open Text, I believe they own Remedy now. They're working on one. And there's a couple of other companies that are out there that are solving this from an agentic perspective. Now, what would that look like? Well, right now, if you onboard somebody, IT doesn't do anything until the manager of that person puts in a ticket and says, "Hey, I've got somebody starting in about 2 weeks. I need a computer and a desk and a telephone number, and they need access like this. And oh, by the way, I don't have time to do this. So talk to our team lead who might be going on maternity leave. That's why we hired the person. So you got about 3 days to get all that stuff to get it done. Have fun. I'm out." Right?
Crazy.
But with an agentic uh, model, who has all of this information that that manager is supposed to be telling IT what to do? Well, it's HR. HR knows who the person is, when their start date is, what team they're working on, what project they're going to be hired for, whether or not they've got employees, who their peers are, and um, and where they fit in the corporate structure. And from that data, IT should have everything they need to know where they're going to sit, when they're going to come in, what kind of computer and software portfolio they're going to need access to, what kind of data access they're going to need, identity access, and why not do it? And if they've got that all figured out, let the machine figure itself out. And you can take it a step further and say, well, we know what our inventory is. And in 2 weeks, we're not going to have enough to satisfy this. So send the request over to procurement. Can you buy this and have it shipped out? And oh, by the way, it's a bit of a they're part of the C-suite. So why don't you put a rush on it and send it directly to their home office, and we'll set it up there. No human needs to touch it other than HR saying, yeah, this person is now added to the payroll. They start in 2 weeks.
Interesting.
Set the machine off. But we need to build that model. And to build that model, we need to know the data, and we need to know what those relationships between the data is. So agentic AI, as much as ChatGPT is cool and these large language models, agentic AI, I think, is where the real transformation is going to happen.
Interesting.
And then you had a third thing that you had mentioned as well, with the SaaS
Yes.
um, technology. I think that's the same thing with SaaS. If you start to take the again, uh, automate the identity access management. You know who these people are working for. You know who these people are working with. Why wait around for a human being to tell you that they need access to it? Asset management should know. The system should know. Then only bring in a human being if something wacky happens that the model didn't account for.
Interesting. I think that's where I kind of, think of non-human identities, where
Mm-hmm.
basically, if there are 100 people, there's 30, initially you have like 100 folks working, but then there are 30 humans and there are like 70 non-human identities. And
Mm-hmm.
does that work? And these 30 people manage the rest of the 70 folks and try to get maximum output can be done.
Right. Right. But if in the busy work or work that makes it difficult for humans,
Mhm.
get the human out of the way. Let the machine do it. And those sorts of patterns. That's what AI is really, really good at doing.
Got it. Got it. Makes sense. So,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I was also exploring different topics, and then I found something on the edge computing. And could you explain, how edge computing is changing SaaS delivery models and what IT leaders should keep in mind, security wise, cost wise, and also performance wise, when they're
Mm-hmm.
basically adopting to an edge solution?
Yeah. So I will admit I am not the best person to talk about edge computing. There are smarter ones that are out there than me. But the real being clear on what the benefit and the risk is the most important thing. So when you say edge computing, what it means is bringing the metal, the machine that's doing the actual calculation, storage of data, the drawing pretty pictures for the user interface, right? Instead of having a centralized system off in the cloud, you bring it internally, you bring it closer to the work that's being done, the humans. And the risk reward is that you have more dedication of the resources to whatever you're doing, as opposed to, say, in a large data farm uh, uh, or data center, that you're going to be commingling and sharing servers and operating system environments with other entities, other corporate entities that are running that space and running those boxes. Um, so you then eliminate the risk of cross pollination with your data, with your IP that could maybe happen, but the risk then is kind of akin to how much more work and service and support teams and resources you're going to need locally that might make more sense to be applied to as a service
Mhm.
that a third party service provider can then spread the cost across multiple customers, right? So it's one of those risk reward calculations that you've really got to get clear on. Is it worth us holding on to this data, these processes, knowing that we're now responsible for the bare metal and the environment that it's sitting in? Can we keep it cool? Can we keep it dry? Can we keep people out of it? Can we get people into it when we need to get into it? Um, Funny enough, I have a contact that works for an organization that builds their own air compressors.
Oh,
And they went through this calculation and they said, you know what? The biggest challenge for data centers is the environment itself. We build compressors that work in those environments. We can build our own mini data centers at each of our manufacturing plants, monitor it with our Internet of Things, control them with our compressors to keep them cool and dry and free of fire and whatever other craziness. run the numbers, and it works out for them. So now, is everybody a compressor manufacturer? They can do that? No, but they went. The important thing is that they went through the process. They thought systemically about what it really means to have a data center close to their manufacturing systems versus hiring it out. And for them, the numbers and the risk all made more sense to bring that in. So
Makes
that really is the key thing. What's that data telling you? And following that data to make the right decision.
mm,
And I
make,
think that's the lesson to really take away from that question.
makes sense. I think it's quite interesting. Your answers are really thoughtful in terms of all various perspective what we get.
Mm-hmm.
I was also kind of thinking what you talked about blockchain and SaaS management,
Mm-hmm.
blockchain-based SaaS management platforms for the decentralized approach. So where do you see the biggest opportunities or the use case of blockchain specifically in the modern SaaS environment what we have right now?
Oh, okay. So I always referred to it as the three-headed monster problem.
Okay.
Asset management, software asset management is always trying to find this balance between three people that are trying to screw it up. The first head that you got to deal with, the first monster, is uh, the software publishers, the folks providing the service.
Okay.
They want to make money as much as you want to use their tools to make your own money, right?
Mm.
And they deserve being compensated for their work, for their IP, for their product. Don't get me wrong. But then how do they charge? They've got different models that they can use in order to try to make things fair. And full disclosure, some of them do not make it fair. They put in terms and conditions. Hey, set up opportunities for you to be using more software than you've paid for, or you've bought more software licenses or subscriptions than you ever intend to use. How do you sort that out, right? So put that aside for a moment. The second group that you've got to deal with is your own corporate leadership. Okay. What are their motivators? They want better, faster, cheaper, commoditize IT. So they're constantly looking at the bottom line, constantly looking at the feature sets and saying, well, why are we buying this when that should provide the same output, but it's cheaper, right? So you've got this push pull of, do we want to use this or do we want to use that? And how much control do you allow inside your organization, lest you end up buying stuff that doesn't work or using stuff that you're not willing to pay for?
Mm. Okay.
Then the third group, right, is the end users. I am sorry, the end users are culpable in this. They're part of the problem. Why? Because the best case scenario, and love our users to death, they just want to do their job. And they want to do their job really good. Let's give them the benefit of the doubt, right? So, but if they're being told by their leadership, hey, better, faster, cheaper, chop, chop, we got deadlines to meet, the really smart end users are going to find ways around the rules in order to get done. And some organizations are set up that the more clever you are about getting around some of the rules, you actually get a reward for. So, from an asset management perspective, you're going to say, look, these are our standard tools, and this is what we can give you, and you're allowed to do this, that, and the other. A really talented end user is going to look at it and it's like, well, yeah, but I need to do this, so I'm going to go do it. So,
Think-
from an asset management perspective, you've got these three groups that have competing interests. They really don't trust each other because one's trying to stop the other one from doing their work. So what's the software asset manager to do? Well,
Hmm.
if you take a blockchain, which by design is to help facilitate data transfer and transactions between people, you know, technically anonymously, but really the reason for the it's late in my day. I'm not going to get that word out.
That's okay.
That want to maintain some privacy because they don't trust the other person on the other side of the ledger, but they still need to do business with them. That's the point of blockchain. So, from a software perspective, you turn your use right into a non fungible token and you pass that token between the software publishers that are creating the licenses, the corporate consumers that are buying those licenses, and then the end users that are actually using those licenses to leverage the software. You now have a solution to these three groups that don't necessarily trust each other, but need each other in order to complete business. Perfect use case for blockchain.
Yeah, awesome. I think that really helpful. So, I was also kind of thinking how there is, teamwork. They collaborate with each other,
Mhm.
different teammates. So, collaboration across department is a vital for SaaS management. Could you
Mhm.
about the importance of building cross-functional teams and how this helps streamline SaaS adoption and also the compliance effort, because compliance is also like a big important chunk when there is SaaS management or when there is any IT software usage in the company.
Right, right. So let's walk those questions back a little bit, right? So the challenge with SaaS is the concept of sleepy money, right? The used to be when software was only on premises,
Okay.
was only run on the computer that was right in front of you. Um, the real threat was that in order to speed things up so that nobody's waiting around on IT, you could deploy the software and then buy the license later. And that's where you get the idea of software audits and all the other problems that come along with that, right? Um, but with now with SaaS and in cloud computing, um, providing access to those resources is darn near instantaneous. But there isn't a good mechanism to know when that software is no longer needed. When it was on prem, as soon as they were done with that computer or the person walked out, that was a pretty good signal.
Right.
But how do you know whether or not that software is no longer needed and you can recover that license and redeploy it? It's really difficult to know. And for a SaaS service provider, they're actually not necessarily motivated to tell anyone because if you say that you bought it and you're still, still looks like you're using it, who are they to say to you that,
Right.
have that license back and not pay the money for it, right?
Right.
So, yeah. So the real threat there is overspend on software that you don't need, licenses that you're not using, and then how do you catch that scenario and then renegotiate? What do you do with those licenses? Do you just put them on a shelf? Do you get a cut rate? Do you pull back and then buy more as time goes on? Any number of ways to solve that legally and technology. Um, but that's the concern. So, how do you get this software in, especially when it's new, especially when it's doing something slightly different, and then get around to, the successful is to bring other people together. Again, I've got to give a nod to my wife and the project management group.
Mhm.
They're really have figured this stuff out. The first thing is you need a champion.
Okay.
And you need somebody that sees the value of the new subscription and can speak to why the end users and the teams would find this more useful than the old solution, right?
Makes sense.
If it doesn't provide any value, why bother using it? It's just a preference. Well, if it's a preference, that actually is some does
Yeah.
have some value. So maybe it becomes a way of sharing, or how do you use both or neither? Well, that's when you've got to bring in your technical team. So you've got to have a champion that is saying, yeah, this thing's really cool. We got to bring it in. And then you've got to have the technical team that can get underneath the hood and say, well, here's the pros and cons from the technical side, to be able to say whether or not there really is value or if it's just a matter of opinion.
Got it.
And from that technical side, that's when you've got to look at, well, what's the costs? What's the security risks? How
Mm.
does it interplay with other technologies? And then how quickly can you bring it to the end users to see that benefit? And the only way you can get those questions and the only way you can really get that data is to find those people with that knowledge and get them together. So that's the tricky bit. And then, of course, the project manager is going to say, well, you're going to need a project manager to keep them from just going off and making it a party every time they get together. Well, okay, yes. But that's the solution to that. And it works really, really well when it is, in my mind, it's kept more informal. The old ITIL 3 idea of having a CAB board and a risk board, and everybody's got to get together and pitch this idea, and it's all this formal and say, you're
Yeah.
getting in your own way. If somebody comes to you with something, they see value in it, their team see value in it. It's not doing anything really nefarious. It's pretty benign when it fits into the rest of the work. Why not? And it might actually turn into something that's more useful, or it could give you a redundancy. And if anybody that's ever lived through a email outage or a Slack outage can tell you, it's good to be able to communicate through multiple channels.
Makes sense.
You've got to have something in. So that's where the really importance is. And I think the last characteristic of that is um, the more diverse the uh, observations,
Mm.
the perspectives from these different people really help make sure that you're covering all your bases, that you're really getting a well-rounded view of what this new technology is. And it's not just something that is neat and shiny and makes a loud bang.
Makes sense. Makes sense. Makes a lot of sense. I think there are a lot of collaboration involved. And now we
Mm-hmm,
talk about teams. I kind of think about finance team, IT team, procurement team. I think
mm-hmm,
all these teams they kind of work in silos, and
mm-hmm.
I feel they often struggle with interactions. What are some of the best practices you would say or you would recommend for improving communication among these teams, basically to optimize all the SaaS spending and reduce redundancy, basically. You talked
Mm-hmm.
about, somebody purchases a platform and it becomes redundant and they don't tell it to the other team. Like it's not in.
Right.
So, how do you kind of talk about improving communication so that, everybody is on the same page and
Mm-hmm.
they're able to reduce the SaaS spending and reduce all these redundancy which happens.
Well, so again, from my perspective, it comes down to data. What data can you collect about this service?
Okay.
Who's the champion? Is the champion even here anymore? I mean, if they've
Yeah.
moved on, they've retired or gone to a different role, then well, who's the next person that can speak to this? If there isn't anybody that wants to step up to say, yeah, this tool is really important, that tool might not be that important. Uh, so um, but that's the real key, is being able to gather this data and then catching when there's a change that requires a reevaluation. Um, there's the other, and yeah, so how the that's part of what asset management needs to get really good at.
Hmm.
We tried to do it with the configuration items and putting this one database together, but innovation happens so quickly. But when you learn to see the signals that there are new platforms being brought in, somebody makes a request to poke a hole in the fire or the corporate firewall to allow data transfer through, or there's procurement finds this uh, gets this bill on a credit card for 1-800 new PM. It's like, okay, so what is this? Um, that's the other trick, is that you've got to have curiosity built into your management systems, that people are willing to say, hey, this looks different. What is it? Where do we go from here? What is it? What are you trying to do with it? And just go. Don't be judgmental, be curious, as the old poet used to say. And I
Nice.
think that's a really good way to help foster that communication. You're not saying no, you're just saying why.
I think that's a point to kind of think about, or what, kind of ponder.
Mm-hmm.
I think earlier you also talked about, HR has all the data, right? And
Mm-hmm.
the data can be used by the system to kind of feed into the system and get
Mm-hmm.
started on its own. So how do you think HR plays a role in terms of SaaS adoption, whether be it an onboarding or onboarding of employees, or onboarding of new
Mm-hmm.
tools, or handling policy compliance. How can
Mm-hmm.
HR department effectively collaborate with IT teams to ensure that the users, uh, basically users needs are met without
Mm-hmm.
compromising on security or any compliance?
Right. So it's not necessarily, let's be clear, it's not necessarily that HR has all the data, but
Mhm.
they are the first to learn critical data about the end users. In the same way that procurement is the first to learn about critical details about new resources coming into the corporate environment. They're buying the network and the routers and the switches and the computers and software and such, right? So asset management needs to play the position of kind of the man in the middle, coordinating these data flows. What's HR telling you, and what can they tell you about things? And then what is procurement telling you? And what are they allowed to tell you about things? That's where the concept of a data map becomes so important. In my book, thank you for giving me the opportunity to plug that one more time. Talking about data maps, knowing who learns what when, and then who needs that data to do their part is darned important, almost as important as the actual process map. Because again, once you know who has what and what they're able to share, then things become a whole lot more easy to manage and model and automate. Now, talking about security, security is kind of sitting above this fray of the shared data and asking, well, why are you sharing these particular data points? They shouldn't be the group that says, no, you can't share that, but they do need to say, well, what's the purpose? What's the point? And is there any point in the future where you're not going to need this anymore? So, for example, talking about onboarding a new employee and grabbing this profile about who are they, where they fit in the organization,
Mhm.
and who they're answering to, it's not necessarily that IT needs to know all of those details, but they certainly need some kind of detail to be able to tell them, hey, this is how you know what kind of role they're playing, and then what kind of hardware and software and
Interesting.
SaaS stack they need in order to do the job that's expected of them.
Interesting.
And you can do that in a number of different ways. Data mask, an API call that just um, obfuscates or remodels tiers, if you will, or some other translation. Yeah, that's how you get that to go. Um, and I keep, it was enough that I put it into the book, and I keep pounding it over and over again. It's not just data, but it's about how that data moves between the different silos in the organization. That needs to be written down. That needs to be known inside and out if you're going to get the benefit of all of these other automations and technologies.
Interesting. I think I also kind of get some kind of, it's also about the access level which should,
Mm-hmm.
the IT team defines for employee joining the organization. So
Mm-hmm.
that's also quite interesting.
Right, right. And if security looks at it and says, "Well, you don't need to know what their PII is. Do you really need to know where they're located or where their home address is?" Well, if procurement's going to have the new equipment shipped directly to their home office because they're a remote sales operator, or you're a decentralized office,
Okay.
yeah, you kind of do.
Interesting.
Or at least know where their home office is so that that group can then ship the equipment over. But somehow, some way, that knowledge has to be known for a group to do their job. And that's where cybersecurity needs to play that balancing act. What needs to be known and what doesn't need to be known? And then can you build a system that conveniently forgets once you don't need to do it anymore?
Interesting. I think
Yeah.
that's quite, that's a point to think on. Also, I think what I understand from this, flexibility and innovation, they go hand in hand. And
Mm-hmm.
from your experience, how can leaders encourage a culture that embraces experimenting with new SaaS tools while they're still maintaining the, guardrails needed for governance and cost control?
Good question. What else you got? No.
Okay.
Do I get a pass on one? Can I like phone a friend or like bring somebody else in? No.
What
Um,
do you like, Jeremy?
no, I think again, so from my perspective and my experience, the manager's role is to create an environment um, for the team to do their job. And so how then, if you start from that perspective, if one of your charges comes in and says, hey, I was playing golf with some buddies of mine and they showed me this tool and it looks really cool, where's the harm? Again, it kind of comes into that curiosity. If you're empowering team your team members, and they have some time, you expect 6 hours, they're going to take up 8 eventually, but that resiliency, if they've got time to research and be encouraged to find new things, then you as the manager, that's part of creating that environment, and then you as that manager need to be receptive to those ideas and then decide if this is important enough. Either you champion, or even better, you teach your team member how do you champion this new idea that you have in your corporate environment. And that's the difference between a decent manager and a really good manager. is because they will find when someone has an idea like that, they will say, that's great, let me run with it. Instead, they will say, that's great, here's how you run with it. And when you're done, let me look at it. We'll put some more polish to it, and then we'll present it to my boss, and then we'll present it up the chain. And that's that concept. This is what that concept is of reinvesting in people. And if you've got a that baked into your corporate culture, the world's your oyster. Now the flip side to that is what happens if they're wrong. you know and that's something that managers need to be able to do as well. Not every idea is a winner. Still needs to be explored. There's still value in exploring that, but then what do you do if it falls apart? Well, mistakes need to be forgiven, and that can be a very hard lesson for a manager to learn.
Interesting. Interesting. I think this is uh, quite helpful. Uh, I was also so I had a question with me,
Oh, sure.
and I was thinking we have so many tools around, right? There is
Mm-hmm.
for IT asset management, there is SaaS management. So, for an enterprise company or for at least mid company, and compared to like a more of a startups, how
Mm-hmm.
much, what's the importance you feel for having a software like SaaS management tool for different types of companies, be it mid-size or an enterprise company? So, what
Mm-hmm.
are your thoughts for them using or not using such softwares?
Okay. So what I say to my clients, the best software asset management tool, best hardware asset management tool, best any tool is the one that's in your pocket. If you go to a photographer and say, what's the best camera out there? They're going to say the one that's in your hand. So too often we get wrapped up in this idea that it's the tool's going to solve the problem. The tool doesn't matter. What you're doing with the tool is what's really important.
Mhm.
So why not find the tool that best fits the use that you have for it? Enterprise organizations are going to have different demands than a 200-person design studio. So
Absolutely.
no anybody that says that they can do a tool that can handle both of those is lying to you.
Makes sense. I think the
So
requirements are different.
yeah, so find the tool that best fits your use case. I was just working with a client, and their hardware asset management tool was built around a concept of a centralized depot. It was struggling with decentralization and just in time inventory, really struggling with the just in time inventory. And nowadays we use just in time inventory all the time. You know, zero touch configuration handled by either the Apple or Dell or whoever's manufacturing, or it goes to someone like CDW or one of these big warehousing spaces. The tool doesn't matter. What does matter is the data. So, how easy is it to gather data, centralize that data, figure out what you want to do with it, and then send the commands out? You might have a half a dozen different asset management tools running around a multinational company. Big deal. So long as they're sharing the right kinds of information at the right time, it solves the regionability. Too
Interesting.
often we get wrapped up around what's the golden source. The golden source is when you finally bring that data together. That's when you've got the golden source. But where it comes from, well, maybe it needs to come from this space. Maybe if we're asking another question, we need to come from here. If it's SaaS or cloud computing, then we need to talk to the golden source is going to be coming from the management portal.
Interesting.
Who talks to that management portal the best for us?
Interesting.
Who's able to bring in these separate threads the best for us? That's the tool you need. And there's
Interesting.
plenty of tools that do that, and there's plenty more that are coming down the pipe.
No, I think so. There are so many learnings from this, and what I understand that data is like a central, which sits amongst all of these things, and
Mm-hmm.
the idea is basically you collaborate. I mean, you data are sitting on various channels, various functions, right? IT teams,
Mm-hmm.
finance teams. The idea is to communicate with each other, get into like a centralized system where you are able to make informed decisions about what is
Mm-hmm.
working, what is not working. Maybe it would be about some kind of processes, or it could be about
Right.
existing systems, or implementing new systems. But yeah, I think it's a lot of insights which I've kind of got from this podcast. And I would like to really thank you for joining us today, Jeremy. It's been a pleasure hearing you all about your insights on IT, leadership, emerging SaaS trends like AI, quantum computing, and how cross-functional collaboration can elevate SaaS management. You know, uh, we hope our listeners found the conversation as enlightening as we did. Until next time, Cloud Eagle SaaS Mastermind, stay curious, stay collaborative, and keep innovating. Thank you. Thank you, guys.
Thank you very much for having me. Good luck, all.